By Samardzija, inside the 20, inside the 10, he's going in! Notre Dame has scored!
Go! You will be that driving force to motivate those coaches and those players to beat Southern Cal!
It's a game of who's going to flinch first, and we know that isn't going to be Notre Dame.
All right, so here we are, 6-2 in the bye week, and in all honesty, we should be 8-0 and number 1, 2, or 3 in college football. But we had a meltdown against Ohio State, and we failed to show up at Louisville, which is so frustrating. And that's why, beating USC the way we did, yes, I'm happy, but it just made me more mad to where we could be. Logan hates the word potential. This team had potential to be something special, and it just fell flat on its face, and it's just so frustrating. So, JR, where do we go from here? 6-2, not where we want to be, but it is where we are. So, got to make the best of it, right?
You got to make the best of it. You are what your record says you are, and the best we can do is to win out, get to a New Year's Six bowl, and win that in dominating fashion that would springboard us into next season. Mm-hmm. That's what we have to do. And anything short of that would be an even bigger disappointment than it already is.
Yeah. Dylan, how are you feeling heading into this bye week?
I'm disappointed, Man. I think if this bye week was 2 weeks ago, we're probably a 7 in the polls. Because I don't think you lose to Louisville off a bye. And then you can go in and beat USC, just like they did this week. I think, but you can't play hypothetical. You just can't. I think looking at the season as a whole, you got games where you've shown up. Start the year, man, we felt on fire, right? We were going into OSU thinking we were world beaters. We were going to beat the world. But can't count. But other than that, looking at it,
Kent State. We felt like Kent State. We can't read and can't write, can't count.
But no, I think there's positives to look at. The defense has been exceptional, and that's one thing with the defensive-minded head coach that we have here at Notre Dame is you know that the defense is always going to be there. They're always going to be making plays and stepping up. So Al Golden's done a phenomenal job. Marcus Freeman has on the defensive side. Like I said, wish you can untap the offensive potential a little bit more. I think Sam Hartman is underwhelmed at Notre Dame. I'm willing to say that. I think that we were expecting higher things of him to win those big games and make those big throws, but he shriveled up like I'm not going to go there on the TV show. But yeah, there's so many different things to look at throughout the course of this year. But I think Estime's been a bright spot. I think there's been some good players on the defensive side of the ball, including Morrison. But 6-2 don't feel good.
Dylan, you woke up and chose violence this morning in the Sox shirt, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah, exactly. It's the White Sox shirt that makes you so aggressive this morning. I've come to know that a lot of White Sox fans are just not happy people. Logan, 6-2. Yeah, 6-2. Not where we want to be. JR says we are what our record says we are.
6-2 is better than 5-3.
Yes, it is.
We would feel a lot worse.
Thank you for saying that.
We would feel a lot worse if we lost Saturday night.
Absolutely.
I'd feel I would honestly probably feel about the same. I would. But
I get what you're saying.
We're still on target for my prediction, though.
Yeah.
That's the whole. We're so reactionary week to week.
Yeah.
It's but it does feel empty. I'd rather feel empty a lot later in the year than I would right where we are.
I look at it from this standpoint: is you're 6-2, you should have beat Ohio State. I'm not going to say you should have beat Louisville because Louisville whipped us in every part of that game.
Mm-hmm.
And is that a coaching? Is that players? I think it's
both.
That's a mixture of both. You find a way to beat a Duke team on the road. That's really good, in my opinion. You have some good games, but the 2 games that you dropped were in your control. It wasn't like Ohio State was better, in my opinion. Obviously, Louisville isn't the better team, but was a couple weeks ago. But I think there is still a lot of room to improve and a lot to look forward to and get excited about. Because you go 10-2, we're lucky. A lot of teams don't get 10 wins in a year, but I would want to go to a New Year's Six bowl and get a win.
Yes.
We haven't won a New Year's Six bowl in 30 some years.
We haven't, Dylan, you and I haven't seen a New Year's Six bowl win.
Yeah.
Nope. Thought we had it against Oklahoma State, but
Thank you, because that's my next That's my next segment. You guys are on a roll, by the way.
all is butter. We on a roll.
Yeah, we're on a roll. Do the Syracuse's, BYU's, Clemson's, South Carolina's, Duke's, and USC's, do those wins for Marcus Freeman outrank the Oklahoma State game, both Ohio State games, Marshall, Stanford, and Louisville? JR.
No. No. They're all. None of it's enough.
That was a loaded question.
Yeah, there's a lot to that. None of it's enough. That's the bottom line. But I'm going to be patient enough to see what 10-2 looks like going into and seeing how that finishes out. If 10-2 with a bowl win and with an Orange Bowl win against Penn State or Ohio State, or I guess, contractually it would have to be somebody from the ACC, and how do we perform moving forward? That, I've got no choice but to say, how about next year? And again, I don't know what that's going to look like, especially at the quarterback position. But, we all agree Samuel has been he's not been the savior. He's not been the savior.
Right. He hasn't.
He's not Savior Sammy. So, and maybe that's not all entirely his fault. But no, you have to win all the games. You have, he has to build I think Freeman is building some capital. A win against USC, again, a win, every primetime spot like that, he has usually delivered more so than not. But no, it's not good enough. I'm sorry. It's just not. But we have to invest. We have no other option at this point. Father Jenkins is leaving, Swarbrick's leaving, new guys coming in, and most athletic directors like to hire their own guy for all kind of reasons. I'm a victim of that. I'm a benefit of that myself. That's just a well-known fact. But I've seen a lot of things this week that there's some parallels to him and Kirby Smart. And look where Kirby Smart is. So, if I compare, and I think you want to compare BK and Freeman, I have some close friends who are tied into USC, and putting myself in their shoes and thinking how frustrating it would be to have Lincoln Riley as your head coach. Mm-hmm. I think he's never going to be able to kind of get over the hump because he has one glaring hole in his, coaching career, and that's his defense. I think Freeman's foundation is much more favorable, and he can overcome some of his inefficiencies on the offensive side of the ball. So I feel much better in having a guy like Freeman than I do about Lincoln Riley, who I have no faith that he will ever win a national championship.
They might end up 7-5.
They very well could.
Imagine that dude in the Big Ten next couple years.
Yeah.
Man, that is something to think about. Now, Logan, I don't think it's a loaded question. I just think it's a good question. I mean, do his wins outrank his losses?
That's an easier statement.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I wanted to, because no, you can't just say his wins outrank his losses, because you got to say who he lost to. Those losses are pretty crucial.
I
And
just said it's a
Okay,
loaded
so
question.
compare his greatest win to his worst loss.
So
What are they?
USC,
Saturday night to Marshall.
You
No.
don't think it was Clemson?
No,
Clemson was higher ranked. Clemson was 4.
I'm taking SC as his best win.
we were off of win, I guess.
Given the circumstances.
Yeah.
And then I'm saying his worst loss, you can talk about Marshall, you can talk about all that. It's Ohio State this year. I think the Ohio State loss is worse than the win. But I will say,
That's an interesting way to look at it.
because ultimately it's his fault. He should have beat Ohio State. In my opinion, he had coached a good enough game to win earlier in the year. And, the defense couldn't finish. The offense actually got down, went and got points, put us back in it, gave us the lead. Defense needs to stop, didn't get a stop. Okay? So I think, because what that game meant, you knew the Ohio State team last year was a lot better than Notre Dame, this team that we had. And it was 10-7 with a minute to go in the third quarter. Ended up losing, obviously, as you guys know, 21-10. Then you got to take your new team to at home against Marshall, and you lose. This year, you think okay, you have Sam Hartman, your defense that you're playing with, out of the 11 guys on defense, I think there's 9 seniors, a mixture of 9 seniors and graduate students. So you have experience on the defensive end. You have Sam Hartman, who's going to finish top 10 in all-time leading pass yards ever. You have Ohio State at home, and you have them on the ropes, and you don't finish. And you put 10 guys out there. I think that's his worst loss.
Fair. Very fair. Dylan, his biggest win and his biggest loss.
I agree with Logan's point for half of it, with the biggest win being against USC. I think that was just a statement win, because you lost to Louisville, given the time of the year, too. You came off a loss. You've played this gauntlet of a schedule. You're 1-2 in your last 3, and all night games. You got the best quarterback in the nation coming to town, and you embarrass him. That's got to be his best win. There ain't no question about it.
Yeah.
Sure, you beat Clemson last year, but I mean,
put Clemson out of their misery. You exposed.
Yeah. Yes, I think that I really thought that Saturday's win was a statement. He put a period at the end of his sentence with that win. Now, looking at his loss, it's got to be Marshall. I'm sorry. How the hell do you lose to the Thundering Herd? That's a bad loss. That's a loss BK doesn't have. That's a loss that a lot of coaches wouldn't have. Is a bad loss to a team like Marshall. Why'd your eyes?
I don't know. BK lost to South Florida in his second year.
Florida,
Tulsa too in 2010. That was bad.
Okay, but he got right.
Navy twice. I have them all written down. I'm ready to go for this debate.
Yeah. All right. Before we get into that.
Hey, all right. What are you thinking over there?
I don't know. I don't know if I feel better or worse about comparing losses. And I think we're overvaluing both wins against Clemson and USC, but being that it was Caleb Williams and Lincoln Riley, that'll trump Dabo and DJ. I don't know. That's an interesting. I never really thought of it that way, that Ohio State is his worst loss. So does that make me feel better or worse about him? I don't know. Because in one aspect, that makes me feel better, because you can justify, like Dylan said, I can justify losing to Ohio State. There's never a justification for losing to Marshall at home. None.
No.
None.
And
I
I'm
mean,
gonna
Lou Holtz lost to Stanford at home as a big favorite. You know, I think Stanford was like the 19-point dog, and we lost to them at home. So, no,
my opinion, my biggest win for Marcus Freeman is this USC win that we just witnessed on Saturday because of the spot. We always mention the spot, and the spot that Notre Dame wasn't a good one. I mean, we got blown out at Louisville. We're headed in taking on a top 10 team, and he blows them out. So,
well, it's like, I mean, it's our Michigan to Ohio State, so that's huge for him.
And
He's 1-1 against his rival.
And my biggest loss, obviously, man, Marshall was a bad loss. Yes, they finished 9-4 that year. Man, that Stanford loss, looking back at it, 16-14, you lose to Stanford at home under the lights to a team that finished 3-9, 1-8 in the Pac-12 too. That game is, I think, the worst loss he has had, especially with the spot that we were in. We had a chance just to lose two up to that point, and he laid an egg. His team laid an egg. Defense was fine. Offense couldn't get it going, and we ultimately lost to a team we should have beaten pretty handedly. Go ahead.
So, Landon, Stanford, Dillon's,
Marshall.
JR?
Marshall.
Can I say something?
No.
I'm gonna say it. I think there could be something made for. I think maybe we're undervaluing the Louisville loss because the season could still be alive.
Very true, but I mean,
in terms of the season itself, that Louisville loss. If they win that game, and they come off a bye and beat Clemson and run the table, could be in the conversation for a bid.
But
Go ahead.
They should have beat Ohio State at home, so you could afford to lose one.
Yeah, you could rationalize the Louisville loss too. Like, you can lobby that one away. Look what they went through. Look who they beat. They're allowed to slip up. I could rationalize the excuses to lobby ourselves in over a Louisville loss. I think more. Yeah, I'm with you on that, Logan.
Yeah, I agree there. Now, here's what I want to get into. Let's see. In just a year and 8 games, Marcus Freeman has more top 10 wins than BK at home. Just as many, I'm sorry. Marcus Freeman has defeated, obviously, USC and Clemson. Brian Kelly defeated Stanford in 2018 when they were number 7 in the country. We were number 8. And he defeated Clemson when they were number 1. We were number 4. So let's see. Year number 2, Marcus Freeman this year is 6-2. Last year, he went 9-4. In Brian Kelly's first 2 years, he went 8-5, needed a long winning streak at the end of 2010. Lost to Tulsa at home, by the way. Got blown out by Navy. Blown out. Logan was there for that one. Blown out. And then 2011 starts 0-2, loses to South Florida at home, loses to Michigan in a game we should have won. We blew a 24-point lead over the Wolverines. 8-5 in 2011. That season was a disaster. Yeah, we got some good wins over Michigan State and stuff like that, but just wasn't a good year in 2011. So, Logan, are you more comfortable in 2 years into Marcus Freeman than you were for 2 years into Brian Kelly?
Well, I also was a lot more mature. I was 10 years old in BK's first year. But to answer your question, it's maybe not as mature as I should be, but definitely a lot less mature than I was in 2010. I'm looking at it 16-10. Marcus is 15-6 right now. BK inherited a mess. He inherited a mess.
Ding, ding, ding. That's why he can lose to Tulsa. Keep going.
and Navy.
Come on, Navy. Dylan, Navy.
So Marcus got the program in a better position, inherited a program in a better position. However, I'm going to say this, and for the first 2 years, I would like to compare, all his losses, because we're talking about OSU twice, Marshall, Stanford, Louisville, and
USC.
Michigan for BK, it's Michigan, Michigan State, Stanford, Navy, Tulsa, Florida State, South Florida,
USC.
Yeah,
At home.
Yeah, I can't validate. Don't get me wrong. I am a big fan of Brian Kelly and what he did for the university. I just don't think he was that guy. He's that guy, if you like a program that gets 9-10 wins a year or makes a big bowl game and you want to, get blown out, whatever the case may be. Marcus is more refreshing. And I think the kids like him more. He truly is, Notre Dame. Kelly's not, in my opinion. It never was. Never claimed to be. But
not even in 2012 or 18 or 15?
No.
Because
there was always an excuse. We talked about on the show, and a big reason why I like him, a good coach never puts his players or staff under the bus. It's always his fault, no matter what the circumstances were. Marcus didn't know that there was 10 players on the field, and it wasn't his job, but he took accountability. It was his fault, which rightfully so. That's his job. That's what he has to do. BK does not. Now I look at it from a recruiting standpoint. In 2011 and 2010, so that's Weiss's last year. So 2011, 2012, Kelly recruited two top 25 classes. Was good. And with Marcus's first 2 years, in 2022 when he was there, he had the 7th ranked class, which is kind of BK, but Marcus had a lot of those guys when he was the DC. 2023 right now, he's 12th. 2024, he's 8th. And 25th, we have the 3rd. But you couldn't recruit at Notre Dame. That's why you can't win. You can't get the kids that Georgia can get and Alabama can get, and you can't get those kids because you're Notre Dame. That was always the excuse. Now, Marcus Freeman, and you can maybe say Louisville was a blowout. Has gotten blown out. I don't think it was a blowout. But BK's losses in big games we're not talking about coming down to the last play of the game or having a lead at the end of the 3rd quarter. We're talking about 20-point losses. We're talking about 41-8 in a huge game at Miami. We're talking about going to a national championship and getting absolutely obliterated by 28 to Bama. Okay? And you can go down the line. He's lost to Louisville. He's lost to Northwestern. He's lost to Arizona State. Duke.
Blown out to the Arizona State, by the way. We were down 31-0.
Ball tag. But I like where Marcus is, and BK in his 3rd year had success. He was 12-0. Yes. That was a rough 12-0.
Pitt.
that was a 12-0 that to take JR's kind of words, that might have been a little fugazi, because there were some games that year that we probably shouldn't have won.
Pitt.
Yeah, but I believe that from what I saw, and I hate comparing, like if BK were coaching, where would we be at right now?
Yeah. I agree, Logan. And before I get my point, I'll send it to JR.
So you guys know I don't like Brian Kelly, but I don't think this is necessarily a fair comparison, because you're comparing Freeman to BK, which in that sense, those first 2 years okay, you want to compare those first 2 years, you got to forget about Miami blowing all those games and everything that happened after 2012. because in 2012 he also went on the road and beat Oklahoma at Oklahoma when they were ranked 5th, I believe. Right?
Yeah.
So you got to remember where Kelly, like, look what Freeman inherited. Look what Kelly inherited. You were only 10. I don't know how old I was, but I was coming off of I don't know how many years of mediocrity. And I was inheriting a guy who went 12-0, was the coach of the year. I had all kind of data going into his hiring that was telling me this guy is a massive upgrade compared to what I knew coming from Lou, which is my standard. So the first 2 years of Brian Kelly, A, I didn't have a choice but to wait. B, he had done it before at the places he had stopped. He had just come off of beating Virginia Tech at the Orange Bowl, had he not? He was undefeated or something like that. So I had no choice, and I had no other chance but to feel, rosy and good about it. I was at that South Florida game. I mean, that was a nightmare of a day. But also, he was coming in and trying to rebuild and dismantle years worth of mediocrity and all kinds of institutional hurdles that he had to implement himself that Freeman didn't have to implement. In fact, he inherited, and he is just trying to improve on himself. So I don't think it's fair, apples to oranges, Kelly's first 2 years to BK's or Freeman's first 2 years, because they both got their warts. They both got really bad losses. I think I also remember Brian Kelly also beating a pretty good Utah team at home off of like a Roger Blanton blocked punt or something like that. So, I'm going to say I felt, knowing what I know now, it's easy for me to say I like Freeman better because we're probably in a better spot. But if I go back to where I was when Kelly, the first 2 years, Brian Kelly, and cutting it off there and giving me amnesia going forward, I can say I felt better about Brian Kelly.
Dylan.
Because I didn't have I didn't have some of that dysfunction of a really good team that we had really high expectations of that Kelly inherited. He had to kind of cleanse, a full cleansing. And with that came a lot of ugly marks with it. But in his third year, he went 12-0, didn't he? And we felt damn good about it.
So what was the expectations for Marcus's first year, though?
Well, again, this goes back to last year. I didn't have high expectations because I knew who Buckner was. Mm-hmm. I knew who Freeman was as a first-year head coach. My expectations then were much lower. So would we finish 9-4? That's what I expected. I didn't have national championship expectations going into last year. I didn't think we were going to beat Ohio State. I didn't think we were going to go on the road and beat USC. I thought we were going to have a couple of other bumps in the road, which we did. Freeman's year 2, we had much higher expectations than Kelly's year 2. Come on, let's be fair.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yes, good point. Good point. Dylan? Wakey. Yeah, good morning, sunshine.
Hey, I'm awake, man. I really like Marcus Freeman. I do, and I think he's had a better start to his Notre Dame career than Brian Kelly has.
You do? Why is that?
I think, man, Brian Kelly, those starting the year, was it back-to-back 7-5 seasons? Was that how he started?
Yeah, 8-5, yeah.
8-5. He won the Sun, whatever the hell. I think looking at Marcus Freeman, though, he's got some decent wins under his belt. And I knew last year, to JR's point, we didn't expect to go in and beat Ohio State. That was a game where you didn't feel it. But this year, going into that game, we felt it. And for a second-year head coach, I don't think we felt that with Brian Kelly in any game that he was going into. And I know Brian Kelly took over a much worse team. Bad spot for him to come into after Charlie Weiss just completely tore this thing to the ground. But I think the team was set in place. I think Marcus Freeman has the guys around him, and I think what he's done is a serviceable job to good. I think he's in that category right now. I'd say he's more good than serviceable. But Brian Kelly, I think through his first 2 years, we were still questioning if he was the right hire.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that is a good point, because 8-5 back-to-back seasons, and you look at 2010. I have them written down right here. His losses in 2010, 28-24 against Michigan in a game that we led with under a minute to go. 34-31 on a fake field goal at Michigan State in overtime. D'Antonio, baby. 37-14 at home against Stanford, a top 10 Stanford team who we got plummeted to. That's Harbaugh and Luck and all that. 35-17 against Navy.
New York, right?
Yes, MetLife Stadium. This is where it starts to get a little. And then the last loss in 2010 he took was 28-27 against Tulsa. He went for 2 for the win at home. Lost to Tulsa. Eesh. And then he had a 4-game winning streak to end the year and go 8-5 on the year. Now you look at 2011. Hang on there, Frenchie. Hang on there. 2011. Take a little.
I love using it.
Take a sip of lemonade. It's all right. 2011, he loses 23-20 against South Florida. He loses 35-31 against Michigan. He loses 31-17 against USC. He loses 28-14 against Stanford, and he loses 18-14 against FSU. So against our rivals, that's 0-2, 1-1, 0-2. So against rivals, he couldn't really get the job done except Purdue. He was 2-0 against Purdue. In 2022 for Marcus Freeman, he loses 21-10 against Ohio State, 26-21 against Marshall, 16-14 against Stanford, and 38-27 against USC. 2011 or 2010 and 2022, kind of similar years for both of these coaches in year number 1. Year number 2, a lot higher expectations for Marcus Freeman. He drops a game to Ohio State in Louisville. Meanwhile, Brian Kelly was not, that 2011 team was just a disaster of itself. So this is a tough debate, but
schedule was tougher for Freeman too, I would argue.
Absolutely. And that is why I'm going to say I feel more comfortable moving forward with Marcus Freeman, because he's shown time and time again he can win games at home. He can win those Stanford games at home when they're ranked. He can win those USC games when he can beat Clemson. He can take Ohio State toe-to-toe. Brian Kelly got his man, I don't cuss on the show. Brian Kelly would have got his ass handed to him in a platter against Ohio State twice. It's shown time and time again.
That's flawed logic, though. You're applying results. That's a biased opinion, because you're applying results that you already know about, that you don't have that information for Freeman.
Okay.
So a ranked opponent against USC win. A ranked Clemson win.
You can't make. That's biased, because you're applying results and things that you knew after year 2. To the things that you don't know. I remember going into that Ohio State game and saying to you guys, I'm confident in this coaching staff that we're not going to have the meltdown or something go wrong that Kelly has. And it turned out that's the exact reason that we lost.
Yeah, I don't think it's a bias.
That information. So this isn't why I raised my hand. Go ahead. You can finish.
I don't think it's a biased point to make. I mean, you look at the ranked wins that Marcus Freeman already has. It took Brian Kelly 12 years to get those.
He also didn't have that. Maybe unbiased is the wrong word, but it's flawed logic, because it's easy for you to apply. You don't know what you don't know.
And I do know what I know, and I know that Brian Kelly could not win the game. Look at Cincinnati.
But that's not fair to use that stuff against him after the first 2-year comparison. That's not fair.
Mm-hmm. I don't think that's fair. Moving forward for Marcus Freeman, I feel more comfortable, and then that's when I can go ahead and move forward.
We'll see if that plays out. How you gonna feel if we lose to Pitt?
No,
they're Pat Narduzzi.
Disaster. I would hate to lose to Pitt. But what I am saying is you look at the losses that Brian Kelly took. His last loss at Notre Dame was Cincinnati. He got his ass kicked by Desmond Ridder.
Okay, but now
that's not in 2 years.
This isn't the argument.
I'm moving forward, though. I am telling you, I'm moving forward.
Are we moving moving forward? Are we opening the whole?
We can't move
Yes.
forward. We're not even there yet.
I just said we're moving forward, going
This is
forward.
awesome.
You look at Cincinnati
Yeah, Dylan.
at home in front of a sellout crowd. You get your butt railed against Cincinnati. You're down by 24 at the half.
Butt railed.
At the half. You're down.
Look,
24.
Landon, what were you? I would have loved to have heard this meeting after we beat Oklahoma at Oklahoma when they were ranked 5th.
They were ranked 8th, and we beat them 30-13. It was a good game.
Okay, but
game.
from there on out, what would you have been saying about Kelly? You'd be saying the same thing about Kelly that you would be saying about Freeman had Freeman beaten Ohio State.
After that Oklahoma game, after that Oklahoma win on the road, I was very happy and pleased with Brian Kelly. I remember saying it, Notre Dame is back, and then we drop an egg against Pitt and almost lose the game. We should not have beat Pitt. Now, in 2013, what happened there? 2014, you start 6-0. What happened there, JR? In 2015, you lose to Clemson. You go for 2 and you call
Listen, I'm sticking to the parameters that you gave for this.
Okay,
you
I'm
wanted
going
to
off
use the first 2 years.
I'm going off of the parameters real quick. What happened to Stanford?
Okay,
in 2015?
Okay, it's easy to say that Kelly's. We know he's not the guy. Yeah, that's easy.
Logan.
That's an easy question. That's an easy answer.
I see you, Logan.
We know that.
What happened to Ohio State in 2015? What about 2016 when he lost to Texas?
But we know that now.
And we do know that. We do know that. What about 2017 when he got his butt kicked against Miami?
If I knew the if I knew the Rangers were going to win 5-4 last night, I would have bet accordingly.
What about 2018 in Clemson? What about 2019 when he goes on the road at Michigan and loses by 31 points?
Listen, dude, I'm not gonna argue with you about whether Kelly was the right guy or not versus Freeman. Okay, and this kind of goes to why I raised my hand. Dylan, you said you prefaced your whole entire argument by saying, I like Marcus Freeman. I loved Jerry Faust. Our family knew Jerry Faust personally. Great guy. But I'm to the point where I don't care if I like you or I don't. I need you to come in and get the job. I don't want to compare the job to like Trump, but I don't give a shit if I like Trump or I don't like Trump. I need somebody to come in here and get the job done. Period. Nobody liked Dan Devine, but he won a national championship and it counted.
It did. Logan, you've had your hand raised for a while. Go ahead.
Lower it. 2 things. First of all, so since it's fresh, JR, did Kelly do the job?
No. Nobody since Lou Holtz has done the job. That's the unfair comparison. I'm comparing Brian Kelly to like how many years after we had won our last national championship? So I'm comparing Kelly against who? Willingham, Davey. And I know that wasn't the question, but at the time when we hired Kelly, that's my comparison. To now turn around and be like, oh, Freeman, we have to now compare you to Kelly. That's an easy jump to make because Kelly was leaving. Kelly had a lot of good years that none of those predecessors before really had. I love Charlie Weiss. Charlie Weiss he's an alumni. How'd he turn out? We couldn't wait to fire him. But when he was hired, everybody couldn't wait. We got Jimmy Clausen. We got all kind of pro talent. After 2 years, we were like, oh, we went to Ohio State. Why don't we compare? Let's throw Charlie Weiss into this argument.
3-9 is all you need to know. 3-9.
But where was he also coming from? He was coming from the New England Patriots. How many rings did the guy have? He was an alumni of the school. He looked like he was a pretty good recruiter. He got Jimmy Clausen. So to then apply all the results after that, I don't think that's flawed logic.
Okay. And I can't believe I'm doing this, but Brian Kelly is better than Marcus Freeman. And one, there might be many aspects out there that he might be better in, but there's one that stands out to me. Kelly put together a really good staff year after year. Brought in guys that, made him better.
Van Gorder.
Oh, God. Okay, but Clark Lee, Elko, Bayless, Tommy, Like some of these guys were really good for the university and really good for Brian Kelly and what he was trying to do.
He also got rid of Van Gorder immediately, as soon as he could. He didn't wait. So, like, are we going to sit around and wait for Freeman to be a nice guy with Parker? That's my you asked me what my concern was going forward. It was Freeman's ability to build and maintain a staff, because right now that's, I think, our biggest question mark.
And that's where, I'm not on the fire Parker train as much as you guys are. I like what he's done with our tight ends. I don't think you rarely ever see an assistant get fired in the middle of the season unless, you do something stupid and then you have to go. But, it is a question. Is Marcus Freeman able to build a staff and build it to where, because as a head coach, you want your assistants wanting to be head coaches as well. So they're going to move on. We haven't seen that. We've seen coordinators move on to be different coordinators and assistants. That's what I would like to see Marcus get better at, is get his staff, let the university let him get his staff.
And does Kelly get any credit for hiring Freeman?
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah, of course. So, I mean, again, I don't think that's fair either.
So that's the one crutch I have with Marcus, and then we talk about his development. Is he developing? I would say so. But I would love to have this conversation, and I've been looking forward to this. We can open it up, like you said, Landon. But next year will be very telling, because next year he's going to have to fill some staff roles. Next year he's going to have to find a better strength and conditioning guy. Next year he's going to have to win with the guys that he's had, because all of BK's guys are basically gone now. Here in about 2 months, gone. So that's where I think we can measure. It will be it will be fair to measure the first 3 years rather than the first 2. Just because you look at what Kelly did in his 3rd year. 12-1. And I don't know about you.
Championship game.
Yep, I don't know about you. I would love to make the national championship game every single year, and if we lose, we lose.
We were playing for it in year 3 under Kelly.
Yes,
we were. Now,
to a Bama team that shouldn't have been there, too, by the way. But it's a different argument for a different day.
Disagree there, but we're 1 year too late or too soon for the 12-team playoff. I think next year, 12-team playoff, this team is in. If it's this year,
well, it better be. Shit.
By Samarja, inside the 20, inside the 10, he's going in! Notre Dame has scored!
Go! You will be that driving force to motivate those coaches and those players to beat Southern Cal.
It's a game of who's going to flinch first. We know that isn't going to be Notre Dame.